All right, this is Disclosure Now. I'm your host, Arkeem Ra. Uh, Here helping me out is John Whipper, as he often does. How's it going, John?
It's going pretty well.
We're here with Insider, who doesn't want to necessarily go public, but has a lot of information. Um, we're using a pseudonym. We're calling her Maria. Um, Welcome to the show, Maria.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing good. I'm at a park right now. I'm watching a family of ducklings um,
Oh, cute.
skitter across the ground. And yeah, I played a show last night, so I was on the way home and I found a park so I could do this interview. So I guess to the listeners and also to you guys, if you end up hearing anything in the background, it's because I'm outside. But I think I found a pretty good secluded spot, so we should be okay.
Perfect.
But yeah, but today we're gonna be talking about your family. For the listeners, for the viewers, I know Maria through her daughter basically because she had some concerns about her daughter and thought she was maybe Montauk, and her hunch was right. She sent me a picture, and I basically remembered that I had a son with her. It was a huge explosive thing that brought back all sorts of memories just seeing her face because he looked so much like her, our son. He looked more so like her than me, I would say. And anyway, Maria and I have been talking for a long time now. John and Maria are also good friends and have been talking. And we just realized that Maria's family has connections to the CIA, Satanism, Hollywood, uh, Masonry, and I guess what's going on in this interview here is just showing how these things are all connected. And unfortunately, we can't name names. We can't because um, her daughter is not public and isn't even necessarily 100% aware of what happened during these programs. And we like to respect people's privacy when they're not public people. So that's a big part of the reason why we're not coming forward with their real name and stuff like that. But maybe in the future we'll be able to actually name names if her daughter, who we'll be referring to as Sandra, because that was her name at Montauk, if she ever decides to be public, which she may never do, so we might not ever get that, but I can assure you, to the people who do trust me, that this is true and accurate information that we are putting forth here. Um, so, Maria, I would like to just ask you, when did you first realize something was different and strange about your family?
Well, regarding on my grandfather's side, um, well, he has family members that are very, very wealthy, but they also were interrelated. His one cousin was married to a guy named Barney Jory, and he used to work for the military think tank. And the sad part is that he was also, I would say, I don't know, a pedophile, or he liked to expose himself to people, and the military would always cover him up every time. They would protect him. And her kids, she had three kids with this gentleman, and her mother, who was a eugenist, her name was, we called her, her name was Martha. Martha. And she insisted on having all her kids, her grandchildren, sterilized because of the mental illness regarding her son-in-law. So all her three grandchildren are sterilized because they just don't want to pass that gene, in the family. And she came, my aunt, I should say, we call her Thea Martha. She she married a gentleman named David Mulvane Hughes, who owned pretty much the whole state of Kansas. And he also had ties with, oh God, what's his name? Howard Hughes, and in Hollywood as well. And so let's say going back, my grandfather, his parents worked in the studios in Hollywood too. They did music and they did props and artistic ventures in that aspect. And my grandfather was quite artistic himself. He designed the Beverly Hills High School flag. I don't know if it's still the same one. From what I understood, it was still his flying there. Now, he was in the Navy. He served in the Navy in World War II. He was a prisoner of war twice with the Japanese, but he had no remorse against them. But I found out through my uncle that after the war, of course, they had shell shock. He wasn't the same man. And he became really reclusive and he drank more. And he would go on missions, apparently. He would, I found out just recently, through everything through my uncle, that he was part of the CIA. And apparently, Chiquita Banana, United Fruit Company, is owned and run by the CIA. And here in Guatemala.
Yeah, that's basically public common knowledge at this point. I mean, I guess
I didn't know.
I guess for normies maybe not so, but I knew that, and I knew that not because I'm into secret space program stuff. I've known that for years because I just don't trust the American government or the CIA like a lot of Americans don't. So yeah, I've known about that. It's not like it's not well hidden. Let's put it that way. It's a known thing.
Yeah, so he was an electrical engineer, and he's apparently everybody, from what I understand, that worked at the United Fruit Company, they lived in barracks, like they had like these houses on stilts. And depending on your rank, you could say your position in the company, you live with amongst your neighbors there. There's rank. I mean, depending on your seniority or what you have there. Anyways, he was there in Guatemala, and he was part of the CIA coup to take down this guy named Abico Arbenz. And Arbenz was a socialist. And so the CIA made it, let's say, a government coup to get him out. But interesting enough, my grandfather and my mom, when she was little, and her brother and my grandmother, they had to escape Guatemala. And I guess they made a plan amongst all the men there that were working there, an escape route to head back to the States. And they had to walk into climb in the swamps there to get to a jet because the U.S. Embassy had no intentions on helping the people there. That's what my mother informed me, okay? So I really don't know.
So your family was involved in overthrowing what would be socialist government?
Yes.
I just want to point something out here for the listeners, for the viewers. If socialism is so bad, and if it's what we should be fighting against, and if it's what we as a people should be fearing, then why does the CIA spend so much time and resources trying to destroy any semblance of socialism on this planet? This group that we know is our enemy, that we are fighting against, that is an enemy against the United States, it's an enemy against the American people, and an enemy against the world. I would just have to say I find it really interesting that there's this pervasive anti-socialism mentality in the United States, and even in the truther community. Well, meanwhile, for me, the whole reason why I'm doing this is I want fully automated, basically, socialism. I mean, you know, I want to be able to live in an environment where we don't have artificial scarcity, where we have the things we need, and where things can be provided for. And I think that the idea that we can't do that as a species, and that we have to be competitive amongst each other in order to exist, is brainwashing. It's mind control. And yeah, I just think that's a huge thing. Why does the CIA spend so much money and so much resources and so much manpower overthrowing communist and socialist governments if it's the boogeyman, if it's the enemy, the real enemy? Do you trust the CIA? Do you really think they have our best interests in mind? I'm not saying I'm a commie. I'm not saying, but I am saying that socialism, as we are social creatures and we need to work amongst each other in order to survive, that is true. Whether that's been abused in the past and stuff like that, I'm not saying it hasn't been, but I am saying that this idea that we can't live in a way, I don't know. I just think that people, at the very least, should think about that. Why does the CIA spend so much manpower, so much resources
Because
stopping
they want total
socialism?
control. They want absolute total control over everything. And
And
since
yes, that's
Well,
true.
and another one thing I would add to that message, all these ET civilizations that these people love so much, they're all what people would call socialist. So just keep that in mind, people.
Yeah, socialism works fine when you have a benevolent government that wants to take care of its people. The problem is on Earth is
right,
we have had so much trouble ever installing a government like that, and then even when we do, keeping it that way. That's the problem.
yeah, yeah, I
Uh,
know.
um,
I mean, but going back, my family, I would say, were American Nazis. Um, regarding my aunt, he called her Tia Martha. She was an American Nazi. My real father, um, I don't know. He's deceased. He died in 1974.
did you?
He was a
Do you want to use names like that? Because I mean, people can trace that to you.
oh,
I can
sorry.
send. I can easily edit that out. I'm using a program.
All right. So okay, I'll just say my father. He belonged to um, the American Nazi Party, and it's all rooted down to the military. Um, like you said, everything connects together. But he was a card-carrying Nazi. I don't think my grandfather was, but I really don't know. Uh,
And of course, it goes
she,
without saying, you're not a Nazi. You're not affiliated with that. You think that's bad.
mm-mm,
Like, just want to be clear to the viewers here.
no, I know, but it's just how can I explain it? Um, politically, in my family, they're always like staunch Republicans, military, pro-military, like a lot of American families in the States are. And here in where I'm at, it is a very conservative country. And my grandfather would be called several times to go on missions, and he would always go to Panama a lot. I don't know exactly, from what my uncle informed me, that he would take care of certain people. He was a hitman, from what I understand, because he had his pistols everywhere he'd go, and he would just get up, tell my grandmother he's leaving for so many days, that don't expect that he'll call or he'll just arrive back home. Nobody asked questions, ever. They never asked questions. They just said, okay, Dad, and left it at that. Apparently, what else can I say? John, what else do you want to say about my grandfather?
Oh boy, he was, and to my knowledge still is, in Solar Warden, or rather an altar of his. And he, I suppose I can use his altar's name, was Walter Zeller, he ruled Europa with an iron fist in the 80s and 90s. Europa, for people who don't know, is a moon of Jupiter. Ark, there's a lot of wind where you're at. Could you mute yourself?
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Um, and so, to put it quite honestly, the version of him that I knew was not a nice man. He was notorious for blackmailing people and things like that. typical dictator type stuff, you know, what you'd expect.
But him here on Earth, he used a lot of MK Ultra. Oh, what would you call methods on trying to help his son? Because
Help
his son,
in quotation marks.
right, he apparently my uncle informed me that when he was a little boy, his dad would put, I don't know, was a speaker or something under the bed or somewhere hidden in his bedroom, and he would hear his dad's voice telling him that he can do better in school, that he brainwashing for him to be a better student, you could say. And I don't know if there's other nefarious things that he put into that too. But I know that he had a love-hate feeling towards his dad. My grandfather apparently killed himself in 1967, and he planned his death apparently for quite a while. He left notes for my grandmother and books and whatnot, what to do, how to balance a checkbook. I mean, he was guiding her because he took care of everything, but he was trying to show her like a couple of years before he did himself in. And he bought a bunch of sleeping pills here in Guatemala, and then they went back to California, and after lunch, he told her that he was going to take a nap. So he grabbed a book, took all his sleeping pills, and never woke up. That's what I was informed. And then, because he told everybody that he had cancer of the prostate, but my aunt, Carol Jory, informed everyone the truth that he had severe, was it shell shock? What does they call that, John?
PTSD?
Yeah, that's what they use now. But back then it was shell shock.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't handle it anymore. That's what I was informed.
Yeah.
So regarding other people in my family, my real father, like I said, he was part of the Church of Satan. He was an occultist. And he got my mother involved in this as well. My mother was always very psychic as well. And it's in our family, the men and the women are very psychic. But again, as I grew older, I found out my great-grandfather from here was a Mason. My grandmother, she was a stout Catholic, but she was also belonged to the spiritualist movement in the Victorian times. So she was always really into the spirit world and also psychic abilities and whatnot. And when I was small, I was being tested with my grandmother and my mom about my abilities, because I always would have dreams that would come true, and I would see spirits. And my grandmother was always taking notes, and they were always telling me, "Do not tell anybody outside. Just keep it with us three." And so one time, I was about 5 or 6 years old. My grandmother took me to some hospital in LA to have these probes put in my head to check to see if I was not quote unquote crazy. And I don't know how many times I was being tested. And then I was spent 2 months in Cedars-Sinai Hospital. But this was regarding for my kidney issues. But there was other exams that they just kept on doing on me all the time. And I really don't know what was the reason for staying there for two months. But my grandmother was behind the whole thing. Okay, I was sick. I'm not saying that's not true. I was sick regarding my kidneys, but it was just over and beyond. Brain scans, shooting dye in my veins. Oh gosh, you name it.
Which is all very classic pre-programming stuff.
I see. I didn't know, but I was.
Which,
I was
Kathy,
there.
you don't have memories of the programs, and I'll be honest, I don't have memories of you, although I'm pretty sure I've interacted with you. But John does have memories of your altars. Could you maybe go into that a little bit, John?
Yeah, there's the only one that I think I remember. There are others where I have other memories that I don't know if they're this altar or not. But the one that I clearly remember is Maria, which is where we're getting the name we use today from. And she was in Nachtwaffen. She was a what's the word? An instructor at the
Weapons instructor.
yeah, a weapons instructor at the Universiteit Messische Heimscheld, or in English, the Mars Defense Force Academy.
And for our listeners, Kathy doesn't have any memory of this, and I want to point out that you listening to this show right now, I mean, why are you into this? Why are you listening to this? Why are you drawn to me? Why are you drawn to my show? Why are you drawn to the subject? There's a very good chance it's because you're in these programs. I mean, it turned out to be that way for me. It turned out to be that way for John. It turned out to be that way for Kathy. First, we were just kind of gravitating towards the subject because we were trying to figure things out. I mean, it might have gone a little bit differently for John. I know that you've had memories for quite a while now, but yeah, I just want to point out that not everybody in these programs that realizes they're in these programs necessarily has to have memories to do it. I think Kathy has figured it out without having to necessarily get memories back. And we're all here in this community to help people with that. If anybody ever needs help with it, we're all here. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Well, but you told me that I had another alter named Eva. Wasn't that true, Ark?
No, my trauma twin from Montauk. Her name was Evelyn, and we would call her Ava. That's the
Okay.
only Ava that I know of. If I did tell you
So
that,
you said
I
knew
would.
your dad.
I don't remember telling you that. I was probably altered out. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I was
no
probably
worries.
I was probably in an altar. That's probably true, though. I believe it. So yeah, that's
Well,
another thing for the listeners here is, yes, I alter out and have conversations with people, and then when I return to normal, I don't remember the conversations. This happens to me regularly. But
Yeah.
yeah, so
all right, but I've seen. Okay, we're going back to. We all would see UFOs all the time in California, and myself, my mother, my grandmother, and by the beach, by Newport Beach, driving onto a freeway, at a Holiday Inn in Santa Barbara. Here, where I'm at in Guatemala, I've seen about 12. And that was in 2016, New Year's. But that's another story. But the thing is, I have seen crafts with my daughter and myself, but I don't recall ever having one-on-one, face-to-face with a being, a life form.
wasn't there an occasion where there's a craft hanging outside of your house
Yes,
for
yes. It
multiple
was like a
days?
round spherical. It looked like the Death Star, but it was red. And then I would say I could have thrown a beach ball at it. It was that low. And I would say it got about 12 feet. It was pretty low. It was hovering over a tree in my garden, and it kept on coming to my house, between my neighbor's house and up to my house, because I live on top of a hill, and it would land on his patio outside. And he belongs to the Self-Realization Fellowship. His guru is Paramahansa Yogananda. And I would be on the phone calling him, telling him what's outside on his deck, and he says he knew. He's talking to them. And I'll be honest with you, I did not like the feeling of this particular craft. And I've seen other ones. Like I said, I just told him to please tell him to stop coming to my house. I don't want them. And eventually it stopped. But then I would see other crafts that are like would morph into different shapes and beautiful colors, like pale shades of blue, pink, violet, and stuff like that. And that had a good feeling. And that was on top of a tree that I have in my front yard. But there's been so many weird things happening. And like I said, when I was living in New Jersey, I know I was abducted, and I was pregnant with my daughter at the time. And I woke up with a type of mark on my stomach. It was like of a triangular shape, but
That was
it
them
was
putting the
circled.
Draco DNA. That was them putting in the
Right.
Draco DNA. So yeah, that was them
I would say
hybridizing.
I was like 3 or 4 months pregnant at the time.
I should say also I'm guessing, but also I feel like I know that from somewhere. Like I'm not just guessing. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's. I mean, there's so many red flags here that it's just unreal when it comes to your family and your life. And for me, it's just absolutely mind blowing because with the connection that I have to Sandra, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like for me, it's like this validation, this proof that it's real, that these memories I have are real, and it can be tough to deal with. Are you okay, John?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You
John, you
sure?
have some memories of Sandra too, right?
Many, many, many. Yeah. I knew her almost from the day she arrived at Camp Hero, which would have been early 70s, I think, which of course is before she was born, but time travel is a thing, people. um, and so she could not have been a day older than 9. I would say she was probably 7, maybe 8, but she
Yeah.
I
could
would
not have been
say
a day older.
7. I remember seeing
Yeah,
how young she was when she first got there,
yeah,
and
Yeah.
she was a very very small child.
yeah. She was very, very young and vulnerable. Uh, she A lot of us had had some degree of psychic training before being brought to Camp Hero.
Mm-hmm.
The batch of kids she was in had not, so she was basically the equivalent of throwing a baby chicken into a pack of wolves. Like, is what it really was. And I, we became friends. We had our ups and downs as far as being friends went, to make a very long story short, because when you're shifting altars and most of your altars probably aren't very good people, that happens. A not too personal story I could share would be a mission that she and I did in Warsaw in August of 1939. So just a few weeks before the start of World War II. And I remember she and I being on the streetcar trying to find our hotel, or I guess they call it a tram, but whatever, trying to find our hotel, and it went through a predominantly Jewish district of Warsaw, and I remember her turning to me and saying, "You do realize that within 5 years, every single person we're seeing is going to be dead, right?" And that's
Wow.
it gives me chills to this day.
My gosh.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Well, I know my daughter is psychic. Like I said, here in the house, when she was small, I would see purple orbs over her body when she's sleeping. And she would tell me she would see these orbs. And then when we would be outside playing in the garden, my I saw this pink, light pink orb hovering over her.
yeah. We still
And
see those. They're in some of the pictures she takes even to this
right,
day.
yeah. And so what does that mean, guys? What is that? Is that spirit or is that beings from another planet?
Those are some sort of group that's connected to her that I'm pretty sure is. I mean, do they seem nefarious to you? I don't think they are. Um,
No, they didn't seem anything bad. And she was playing with him. Like it was almost as if she was playing bubbles with him. Like if you know when you're blowing bubbles and the kids play, it had that same effect. It would always hover over her no matter what, like John said, photos when she was little, I would see like this light bulbs, like these orbs around her, above her, in front of her. And I would even see these light flashes, like a massive flash, like it was, I don't know how to explain it. But yeah.
I don't personally. I've heard a lot of theories. Some people say that that's your soul family
Mhm.
visiting you, like if you're a. I hate this term, but if you're a starseed, um, sometimes because they can't show themselves explicitly, they'll come down here as orbs. I've heard that theory. I've heard a theory that they're your ancestors' spirits. I don't know. It could be a lot of things. I've never. I've seen orbs myself. I communicated with one once. I've never gotten anything nefarious at all.
No.
No, I don't think they're.
Hmm.
um, and yeah, it's just really interesting to me because, again, for me, um, it's just kind of proof that that this is real. That all these strange things happen to your daughter.
Well,
When I
she has the ability of telekinesis, but I don't think she has. She got that from me. Um, that would happen with me when I would get really upset. Things start moving, like, but not to the degree of Carrie, But um, the same thing with my daughter. She had some weird things happening, but I believe we have a portal in her bedroom, and that has a lot to do with it. That's a long story, but is everyone there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay.
Yeah, I've just been
Um,
turning off my microphone because the wind's so bad. So that's why it sounds
all
like I'm
right.
disappearing.
So the thing is that she had things go missing in her room, and we don't have a maid. It's just her and me, and the cats are not going to do that. So basically, she was looking for a camera that I gave her for her birthday, and long story short, it was missing for I don't know how many months. She found it behind all the towels, like where you keep your sheets and towels. It was pushed in the back there. All right. So we just kind of looked at each other like, what the hell? And other things went missing too. And so I would just stamp my foot and I tell whoever it is, bring it back now. It was almost like if it was, people have told me they could be elves, they could be, I don't know what you want to call those little people that
Imps.
they're goofing off with you. They just want to play. And
Imps.
so
What they're
someone told
called, I
me,
think.
yeah. And then someone told me, you know what? Put a thing of rice in a bowl or beans or, of course, dry or candies, like little wrapped candies or jelly beans. And then there will be more, how would you say, complacent and not so mischievous. So I did it. I had nothing to lose, because my daughter was getting freaked out about it and things just kept on missing, but mainly her things. Okay. And so we did that and it stopped for a while, but I know she has that ability to make things move. And the thing is, she has a temper. I mean, oh God. She has a temper, and you guys already know that she has a temper.
Yeah. That's one of the things that they. Well, that's one of the things that they liked about her at Montauk is they tried to get her angry, to provoke her, to activate her abilities, and
All
yeah.
right, can you guys elaborate her in Montauk, her abilities, her strengths, her powers? What was that?
Um, I just remember that she is really good at manipulating people. To be honest with you,
She still does.
yeah, she is really good at manipulating people, and we're she was a spy. That was 90% of what she did at Montauk was she was a spy, and she could kill people remotely, which pretty much all of us could do. But she could kill people just by basically with her mind, and that was the way we got a lot of people throughout history. Like there's plenty of people that would have changed the world and done lots of things, and we literally would just go back in time and kill them before they even got the idea to do the thing they're gonna do. But yeah, I sense that at one point, that later on when she got more powerful, she was able to open portals, and she was able to even open portals to alternate realities, which that's extremely coveted. Not every that I can do that, and there's not very many people who can do that. Opening portals is one thing. Opening portals to a whole entire reality, that's you have to be like a level 1,000,000 mage basically to be able to do that.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty sure she had that ability. My memories are fuzzy, and I have to alter out in order to really go into them. But I do sense that she was able to open portals to other realities, and that's one of the things that made like if you had that ability, you're pretty much indisposable, and they weren't gonna. There's people where it's like, okay, if we lose them, we kind of like would evaluate our resources and what it would take to get them back, and sometimes we'd leave people. She was an individual that would not get left behind. She was too valuable. So that's some of the stuff I remember about her. And despite the fact that she had a temper and all those things like that, she has a very big heart, and she can be extremely kind, and she cares about the things. She cares about people. She cares about the people in her life, and of course
She does.
that was manipulated. That was used against her in the programs, of course, but that was to her detriment. But um, yeah, Jana, you could add to that probably. You probably have clearer memories than I do.
I pretty much just what you've said. She was an incredibly skilled spy, like I said, and she had an ability that there. I've actually been trying to think of a name for it because I've looked it up and there is no name for it, and I'm thinking the best name for it would be a linguistopath, where she could overhear a conversation in just about any language and somehow psychically absorb that language, and she would be fluent in it within minutes.
Wow.
Uh, that was a thing that quite a few people there had. My
And
alters
obviously,
did
that's
not.
extremely useful because there's a
Yeah,
lot of languages that don't even exist anymore. That at one point in human history were, you know, uh, there's languages that are dead. There's languages that existed in other timelines that don't exist in this timeline because we got rid of them. So there's just all sorts of countless examples as to why that's extremely useful for a time traveler.
yeah. So, and that's my alters did not have that ability, but there were some people there who did. There was one person yeah, she said I can use her alter's name, Elena. I think both of you should know. You probably
Hmm.
know who that is.
Hmm.
And she had that ability. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm just now realizing it seemed to be all women who had that ability, and I don't know why, but
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Elena, who I believe it is, I don't know why I keep on feeling she's related to my mom.
yeah,
I
that's
really, 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 really feel it in my gut and my soul. I feel like she is. And that's why I have a strong affection towards her. And When I see her,
they
I
even
see my
look
mom.
alike.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're related somehow. I don't know how, but even down to her birthday is just a day apart from my mom's birthday. And yeah. And my mother, I believe you guys know her altar, John. You knew my mom?
I knew 2 altars of hers. That's yeah. Let's see. Well, the first one, I suppose, going in quote unquote chronological order. If you,
Sorry, I'm laughing.
it's okay. It is funny. Like, one of them that I knew was Annalisa was her name. And she was in Argentina in the 50s. I'm assuming this was CIA, but I'm not entirely sure. But Annalisa was what we euphemistically call a courier, which is
Mm-hmm.
a very nice way of saying basically she was a
A gopher.
no, she was a black market dealer of
Yeah, yeah.
whatever assets needed. She weapons, drugs,
It's an
cash,
extremely
whatever.
common. That's an extremely
Yeah,
common job in the programs. Things need to be moved around.
Really?
People need to be moved around. Yes, I was a courier on Mars, and um, I don't have really clear memories of other times, but there's been multiple times where I've been my job as a courier, and it's the best fucking job you can have in the programs because you bring things to people, and as long as you don't fuck that up and you bring them what they want, they're always happy, and especially when you
All
bring
right.
them, cases of beer, or drugs or whatever, or food.
Cigarettes, whatever.
Yeah, or
Black
sometimes
market stuff.
sometimes it's food, and it's like they've been eating, like stuff that's coming out of packets, or they just haven't been eating very good. And then you show up with a bunch of real food. People love you. People love you when you're a courier. The ladies loved me. It was a good job to have in these programs. But obviously,
Well, it sounds
it's
like
dangerous
it's
though. It
something
is
that's
dangerous.
always existed, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
it
a very
happened during the
dangerous job.
wars.
It's a very dangerous job, especially because a lot of times when you're a courier,
Yeah.
Nachtwaffen has couriers that work for them. Or they don't work for Nachtwaffen. We're not connected to them. You deliver to somebody who delivers to somebody who delivers to Nachtwaffen. There's literally like 3 people in between you guys, so that you technically aren't
Wow.
associated with them, even though you're actually working for them. Like those cat girls I was talking about. Elon Musk's making the joke about we're gonna make cat girls. That's fucking real. It's gross, first of all, and it's a gross joke to make Elon. But yes, they're real, and Nachtwaffen traffics them. I've trafficked them for Nachtwaffen, but it was through a Russian. I spoke Russian, and I wasn't even connected to Nachtwaffen, but yet I was connected to them, and I was working for them. And they're just smart enough to know. It's the same reason why corporations there'll be a parent corporation, and then another parent corporation, and then another parent corporation, and then like when the corporation gets sued, that corporation takes the fall instead of the actual corporation that made that corporation. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like the same
Yeah.
idea. Like when someone does get caught, because a lot of the shit they're doing is illegal. When someone does get caught, Nachtwaffen isn't held responsible. They didn't have anything to do with it, but they did. You know what I mean? They're really
So
good
they just
at
wash their
shifting
hands.
around money
They
and
wash
shifting
their
around.
hands.
They're very good at shifting around money and resources without people realizing it. And
Right.
if the German colonies knew the stuff that Nachtwaffen was doing, if the German colonies themselves knew some of the stuff that Nachtwaffen was engaged in clandestinely, they'd be pissed. They would be
Uh-huh.
pissed. Yes, but not to interrupt, but I also want to get back on all the connections in your family as far as like the we haven't gotten really into the Satanism part yet, or the
All right.
Masonic part.
All right. Okay. As regarding the Masons, that was here in Latin America. And my grandfather belonged to it. I don't know what rank he was, to be honest. I don't know. Um, he always used to make fun of the Catholics. He would make fun of his wife because she was a diehard Catholic, and she would always go to Lourdes in France because she became blind because she was diabetic. So she was always looking for miracles, and he didn't believe in that. He was a Mason, but he kept it kind of quiet. Um, my grandmother, his daughter belonged to oh God, what's it called? Rosicrucians, and that was in L.A. And she would go to psychics almost on the week. Every week, she would go to a psychic in L.A. But she was very psychic, but she never really wanted to talk about her abilities. But she was always trying to work on my abilities. And my mother was always, busy working. She worked. She was a media buyer at the time in the 70s, and she used to work with the band Kiss. So I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but going back to my dad, I should say, my real father, he worked with Lockheed Martin. He owned a company of a copper cable company. So he was also a contractor for a lot of
Lockheed Martin, by
prisons.
the way, is one of the hugest. They're huge in space. They're the ones who are building the spaceships. So yeah, but
Right,
keep going.
right. But this was back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I'm almost positive that my father, if not my grandfather, probably knew what's this guy Tompkins, the one that what was his
William
name?
Tompkins. William Tompkins.
I believe they knew him. I do. Um, hold on. They were all in. My grandfather would actually go to Edwards Air Force Base a lot. My uncle informed me that he was always being shipped off over there. Again, he would not talk about what he was doing. He
John.
never ever spoke of
John, do you know
what?
anything about St. Edward's Air Force Base, John? I sense that there's importance to that.
Oh, it is. It's all connected with what's going on in space right now.
Are you there, John?
I
Well,
don't hear
anyway,
him.
yeah, I can
But
sense inside me that that's a really important location, and I know that John would probably have more to say
I
about it than
believe
me.
it's in San Diego, but honest to God, I don't know, or it's in LA. But I'm just saying, our whole family was based in Hollywood. We're in LA the whole time. Beverly Hills, Hollywood, North
It makes
Hollywood,
so much
where
sense too because in the original timeline, your daughter became a movie star. In the original timeline, that the God timeline, the one that wasn't altered.
which she still wants to do,
And, yeah, and she's
Um,
she's been in a movie. um, so yeah,
yeah, so I mean, but she wants to hit it big, and that's what scares me. But
it
whatever.
is it is very scary because she doesn't understand what she's getting herself into. But I also know that when she has a fire in her gut to do something, you can't talk her out of it. So don't even try.
Oh, she's stubborn. I know. But what was I was going to say something else. Uh, well, going back to my grandfather and the fact that they were all in cahoots. Meaning, my father, he had the copper cable. He would work with Lockheed Martin. He would work with the prisons, and they're all together. They're all meshed. And he did know Anton LaVey. Like I said, he belonged to the Church of Satan, and a lot of Hollywood members are artists as well. And he did know what's his name? Oh God, who had the temple set? What's his name? Aquino,
Yeah,
Michael
Michael
Aquino.
Aquino.
Um, they knew him. They all knew him. They were all friends with each other. Uh, I don't know exactly the extent of their. I shouldn't say it. They're more like acquaintances. I don't know everything, but my mom is the one who informed me that she did belong, and my father belonged to the Church of Satan with Anton LaVey. And I thought she was joking, and she's like, "No, where do you think?" I have a lot of she gave me my first tarot deck when I was 18. She was always, again, I had a Ouija board, and she wanted me to work with that, and it did. I have that ability to connect to the dead, but the thing is, I don't know. Is John there?
Yeah,
John's
John.
not
Yeah,
there.
I'm here. I'm
Okay,
here.
John, remember I told you the story where I thought I was possessed? And
Yeah.
can you elaborate a little bit more about all this time I thought I was possessed by a demon or a lowercase spirit, but John says it was most likely an altar. Go on, John, please.
Yeah, you said you suddenly became really strong. You lifted up your
My
friend by
friend.
the throat and you were speaking in a man's voice.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
me, that's more likely to be an altar. Um, in my experience, 98% of the time, if people think something is a demon, it's an altar. Just that's what I've observed. And
They thought we were
Like,
demons. They thought we were
yeah,
demons, and there's that guy, what was his name? There's some guy that got put on the Air Force, and he was new, and they're changing things around a lot, and when he found out about us, oh man, because he was a religious guy, he couldn't understand it. He thought we were literally demons. So, yeah, that's a huge misunderstanding that happens all the time. Penny complains about it all the time. People are always like, we'll do an exorcism on you, Penny," and she's like, "That's not gonna work. You don't understand what's going on here." So
yeah.
yeah, it's commonly that it so often happens.
but
Um,
Ark, the craziest thing is I remember this, okay? But I remember my voice, it was of a man. And I remember the strength I had of my arm was like of a man. It was, it took two, three guys to peel me off my friend. I mean, I literally grabbed her by the throat, lifted her up, and slammed her against the wall. And I just told her, I think, to shut the fuck up. And, I was really rude and nasty. And And then I shook my head and I'm just like, what happened? I wasn't on any drugs. I wasn't drunk at the time. I was totally stone sober. So uh, this was happening again another time. A friend of mine, we were just hanging out at this place called Coventry, and a group of black guys came by. They were really drunk. And the guy was just being really crude and rude. And he whipped out his wiener and started to try to shove it in my friend's face. And he grabbed her and he slammed her head against a brick wall. I just went ballistic, guys. I beat the hell out of him. Okay. And it took again like eight guys. I just snapped. I snapped. I literally snapped. And I had like the steel toe Doc Martens on and I was plummeting him. Okay. And so finally the guys finally peeled me off of the guy, and everyone went their own separate ways. And I don't, this is what people told me. I don't remember. Okay. I remember the moment when the guy was doing what he did to my friend. But after that, during the whole brawl, I don't remember anything. And I know, guys, my mother had the same thing. She had the same thing. I think I told you, John, about the time here. She went downtown and some thief tried to steal from her, and she took her nails and gouged his eyes and slammed. I mean, she took her nails from his into his eyes and just pulled down, and the guy was bleeding.
Yeah,
And again,
there's this thing that we got in us, and I've had it my whole life, and I always thought that I must have some serious fucking mental problems. But when you walk into a room and you're an asset, there's a part of you that is assessing everything around you and saying, okay, that could be
yeah,
a weapon, that could be a weapon, that could
yeah,
be a weapon, I could do that, and I guarantee you that anybody who ever comes at me and tries to fuck with me, I will alter out and I will fucking kill you with my bare hands. I know how,
yeah,
and I've done it to
yeah,
people plenty of times. So
yeah,
it's fucking scary though, because it's like a switch that flips, and
yeah.
once you flip that
Exactly. You
switch,
nailed
you
it.
can't turn it off, and you
Yeah,
will kill someone when they. But
yeah,
fortunately, normally self-defense is going to be a pretty good argument, because the only way that it's going to happen to you, 9 out of 10 times, is if you're afraid of dying. That's the only time your alters are going to come out like that, is when you fear for your life.
my mom would tell me. She said it's called temporary insanity, and my mom she would lose it. I mean, I think thinking back now, my mom used to beat the hell out of me as a kid. and I start singing this. She said her mother did the same thing. My grandfather did the same thing. And he was more controlled. He would take out his belt and whip the shit out of his son and sometimes my mom. But she would tell me that my grandmother, her mother, would lose it completely. And that she starts shaking and she started grabbing, like you said, whatever's around. And she'd take it and smack the shit out of my mom or her son, you know. Again, she said it was called temporary insanity. But like my mom, I don't know how many times we had altercations with, like one time there was a peeping Tom in Ohio. And she was coming into I was watching MTV at the time, and she had like a knife in her, she was chopping something. And she had this huge ass knife in her hand. And then she saw the peeping Tom and she just went outside and started chasing the guy down with the knife. And she was going off in there, and you see this crazed woman with a knife going down the sidewalk, chasing this guy. And then she pulled these jocks in the car and said, "Get this guy, he's a peeping Tom." And so they parked the car and tackled the guy. I had to call the cops, and the cops would come, and they said, okay, one was laughing and said, "Listen, you really can't let your mom go chasing a guy down the street with a huge like butcher knife." And it was
what
funny,
else are you supposed
but it
to
was
do?
scary.
Let a guy? I don't know. I feel like that's kind of what you got to do. But okay, sounds like a
Yeah.
cop to me. Actually solve the problem. Actually do something about it. No, don't do that.
Yeah, I know. And my mom with the jocks, they held him down until the cops showed up, and she explained herself, everything. But I think what it was is that people seeing my mom running down the street with this knife. I mean, it's comical now. You could laugh, but back then it was just like, whoa, you know. But that my mom, I think these are the altars she would kind of flip.
Mhm.
And like I said, is several times it happened here with thieves. She would just like I did with the guy in Ohio. It was temporary sanity, or I guess my altar popped out, and this amount of adrenaline that comes out, it's crazy. It's crazy, guys.
Yeah.
And I could still sometimes, it takes a lot for me to get really mad. But like my daughter, she pulls my strings and she gets me, she points it, and I explode. And things start moving. Literally. I mean, things fly in the house when I get really mad. And then she knows that she crossed the line and she backs off. But
See,
it takes a lot for that to happen.
this is what we deal with, people. Normal people don't have to worry about this shit. You don't have to worry about stuff flying around when you get angry or causing storms. That happens to Penny. She can cause the weather to go crazy when she's.
Yes.
And
I
yeah,
can
different people. You know, we have different things we affect and stuff like that. And it's messed up because the more I learn about it, like it is kind of like the X-Men where we had specialized abilities. Like we had specialized abilities,
But you know, but sometimes you don't realize you have those abilities, though. It just happens. Like for example, someone told me, a psychic told me, two of them said that I have abilities to connect with lightning and thunder. And they say for me to talk to Thor, and I thought that was kind of bullshit, you know. But it's true. I almost got struck by lightning 2 times in Ohio. And here I could always tell when a storm is coming. It comes close to me and I start to panic. So I just go hide in my bed, and that's it, because lightning has come through inside the house. Like it'll be a sunny day, and then all of a sudden this lightning bolt comes in the dining room. And Kim was here and she was just like, oh my God. And like I said, another time, my tree where my daughter was always hanging out, the orbs are there. These I don't know what you'd call it, but it's like this bright light that comes out of the sky and goes straight into the tree. I thought it was lightning, but it wasn't. It was just energy. From what I don't know, but I do believe I have I attract them, or I have the ability to work with them. I don't. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a little flustering for me to understand why and how, but yeah.
Well, it's strange because it's like if you were to think about it and try to affect moving things with your mind, if you were to sit there and try to move a pencil on a table, you could probably sit there for hours and not get anywhere. But
Yep.
when you're triggered, next thing you know, things are flying around, and it's because our
Yep.
abilities aren't. They don't require thought. They really don't. It's like grabbing something with your psi energy is the same thing as putting out your arm and grabbing an apple when it falls. It's the same thing. It's an extension of your body, and it's just there, and you just know to use it. But when you're in
Yep.
this frequency where you're taken out of that and you're more or less your mind controlled to not remember that, obviously then you can't just be like, oh, I want to grab that thing across the room and do it. It takes a situation of extreme pressure to where you have to protect yourself, or obviously when your emotions are out of control, you can't even control what you're doing, and it's so annoying as somebody for us in these programs, because it's like we have these abilities that we could use, right, that could be helpful. We could do stuff with them, but instead we don't have any control of them, and they're taken away from us and used by other people for nefarious purposes. It's a bummer, but yeah, these abilities do seed into our normal lives. We accidentally use our abilities. It happens.
My question to you boys is this. Those times that my grandmother would take me to get these quote unquote exams done, are that's part of MK Ultra, or what exactly is it? Are they trying to harness my abilities, or try? I don't understand. What
John
exactly?
already explained it. They're priming you for MK Ultra. They're priming you.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
It's the same thing as getting called down to the office in second grade and filling
Yeah.
out a nice little pamphlet. It was just you encountered it in a slightly different way. But yeah, they found you. They started fucking with you, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
but again, okay, going down to my daughter's father's side of the family, he comes from a military family as well. Um, his father, her grandfather is a retired lieutenant colonel, um, but from another country. Um, so you could say she has it coming from both sides. I don't know.
so let's just reiterate here. We've got CIA connections. We've got Air Force connections. We've got
Yeah.
Hollywood connections. We have satanic connections, and we have Masonic
No.
connections, all in your family.
Yeah.
And that is quite the. It's a lot. It's a lot of connections that you guys got going on
But I
there.
have nothing right now. No.
And
Yeah.
going back to your mom, just really quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
There
sorry
was.
about that, John. I didn't mean to
Oh,
cut you off
it,
there, but
oh, it's okay. I don't mind. Just there was her other alter, Julia, who is the one I knew quite a bit more. Giulia. She was
Italian.
Italian. What?
She was Italian.
Yeah, she was Italian. She, but off-planet Italians. And
which is a pretty big thing, by the way, people. It's not
yeah,
talked about, but
yeah,
they're out there. They have big colonies, and they have a big role to play in this whole thing.
yeah.
Wow.
And my alter Heinrich, met her during some operation or other in this one colony, and they were spying on opposite sides, but he convinced her to be a double agent, and she
Yeah.
was, and after that he exfiltrated her from that place, and she became a Nachtwaffen operative, and one thing led to another, and she and Heinrich were married for 3 years. They were not a good fit. But
Wasn't she caustic back then too?
she was, yes. She could.
She was caustic. She
She,
reminds me of my daughter in many ways.
yeah. She could be very, very sweet.
Yeah. She was
And
very generous.
yeah, she was. She was very generous, like you said. She was,
She had a wicked sense of humor.
yeah. And she was incredibly intelligent.
Oh yeah.
It,
Oh yeah.
but she also had issues with temper, and there were other reasons. She and Heinrich they weren't meant to be. But from my understanding, Julia is still out there. She's still an Luftwaffe operative, and they still meet on occasion. They didn't have any kids.
No, my mother was not. Okay. She wasn't meant to be a mom. My mother was not meant to be a mom. You know how some women are meant to be mothers and some are just not. And my mother was not. And she informed me that she wanted to abort me, as well as my real father wanted to abort me too. And the person who told no was my grandmother. My grandmother forced her not to abort me. And I don't know. So that's why I'm still here. I always kind of felt like my mother resented my existence, even though it was, again, like a love-hate type of thing. I could say that. But
yeah.
I kind of still feel the same way about her, too.
One thing I wanted to bring up was this all gets really strange and really confusing for all of us. But right now, Sandra in the Here and Now, their cover altar, is dating who looks like they could be a clone of her grandpa.
You saw the photo, right?
Yeah, they look
It's
a lot
insane.
alike. They look a lot alike. And it's very confusing. It gets so confusing with the time travel and the clones and who is who and what's what, but I figured that was just something to maybe just kind of subtly drop in the interview because it's not that happens kind of often. People are like, you
Really?
look exactly. Well, yeah, like for instance, Amaria, Sweet, she looks exactly like my mom. She looks just like her. Like, it's eerie. So yeah, there's just
So
all
how
sorts
does
of
this
stuff
work?
like that going
Listen,
on.
Art, how does that work?
That's kind of what I'm wondering. Because I don't think it's always clones. I don't think it's always the same person. But it's like for the same reason that the royals would, interbreed to the point of their own detriment. Is because we have this DNA that's extremely valuable to them, to the programs, which I think is messed up. I don't like eugenics. I don't agree with that. I don't think I'm better than anybody else because of my abilities or
Well,
whatever.
my family is really big in that. My grandmother was the first one to marry outside the family, guys. She's the first one. Everyone else, her parents were first cousins, and so on.
So there we go.
So
More proof that
Yeah.
you're basically an Illuminati family, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
I think Illuminati is actually a really it's the pop culture term. That's not what they call themselves, but when you say it, people understand what you're talking about.
What they call Masons back in the day? I don't know.
I personally don't know. There's more than one secret society. There's not just one group. There's different groups, both working together and competing against each other. That's a big misconception that people always have, is that it's this one overarching group. It's not. It's all a bunch of different groups vying for control, competing with one another. That's what's really going on.
Right.
That's why, like, like, I know a lot of people out here or in the truther community have like a lot of respect for the Kennedys and stuff like that, and I get it.
Yeah.
I respect him too. It sucks that he got killed. He was trying to do a lot of good things, but it's just another power circle. It's just another circle of power.
Well, yeah, it's just like the Romans. It's the same thing.
Yeah, there's
They
Trump.
kill the Caesar,
Trump's.
another person wants power.
Trump is the same thing.
Yeah.
Are there worse politicians that are with their hands deeper into the muck? Obviously, but he's not perfect either, and he's got vested interests, and he's got his little cabal of little crime syndicate to protect too. Are they sacrificing children like the Satanists are? I don't think so. I don't think Trump's doing that kind of stuff. But he is a greasy guy. He's a freaking greasy guy. So it's just one of those things where I don't. Sorry.
And probably a child rapist if he was a lifelong friend of Epstein.
Yeah.
People always conveniently don't say that, but he was.
They try to they bring up the thing about how he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of the Trump hotel at one point. That's always what they bring up when you bring that up. But there's actually a lawsuit out there that Trump got sued for raping a 13-year-old girl with Epstein, and the details are pretty graphic. And of course,
It does not surprise me.
yeah, and also I know someone in this community who knows somebody from New York who's a taxi driver, who said that he'd always bring teenage girls to Trump's Trump Tower for Trump, and these weren't prepubescent, these weren't kids, but they also weren't adults. So I think it's kind of a low bar to where it's like, well, at least he's not killing and raping children. He's just fucking 16-year-olds. I don't know. It's like, it's still bad, But I will agree and admit and make the concession that one is worse than the other. But still, I wish our standards could be a little higher. I guess is all I got to say about that. And I've been trying to look at it impartially because I don't like any presidents, but every president has done a few good things. But yeah, I think there's just a lot of weirdness going on with the Trump thing. People look at him as a celebrity. People worship him. They kind of look at him as a cult figure, and I always think that's dangerous. I think that's dangerous. I think the politicians should be treated as servants. Literally, they're a fucking servant. They're not somebody you put on a pedestal. They're working for you.
You guys want to hear something weird? All right, today is actually the voting for a new president in Guatemala right now, okay? There's over 28 political parties.
Wow.
That have tried to. What does that tell you guys?
Well, here there's two
And it tells you
to keep
just
people polarized.
how much they're going to steal. 28 political parties. I've lived here since '89. Not once have I seen that many. Nobody in this country has seen the amount of political propaganda and the parties that are trying to get involved. Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know
It's
what's
insane.
better or worse, because like obviously like two parties is bad because it polarizes people. It's designed to polarize people, and there's so many things, so many agendas being slipped into the common psyche that people don't even realize their agendas that are being slipped in, and what's going on is it's the division. The agenda is division. It's keeping us divided, keeping us talk about issues that kind of really don't matter. It's not that they don't matter, but they also don't matter as much as other things. Like a good example would be the LGBT conversation right now. I don't even want to state my opinion on it other than they're distracting us. They're distracting us with that issue big time right now. And I don't know. I'd also like to state too that there's a lot of people with gender dysmorphia and stuff like that in the super soldier community because of having alters and stuff like that. And I really don't like the way that trans people are being treated by us right now because whatever agenda is going on, I know there are transgender people out there that are assets and super soldiers, and they're never gonna enter this community if they friend us and the first thing they see is transphobic memes and stuff. So I just think it's something for people to think about. I think the biggest agenda there is the division, and it goes without saying, it's common sense, but I'm going to say it. It's not. You don't have to worry about gay people. You don't have to worry about trans people. Worry about the fucking pedophiles and stop acting like being gay and being trans equals sexual deviance. There are gay and trans people who don't even like sex. So it's just false correlations being made and stuff like that. But again, I'm not trying to be polarizing. I'm not trying to feed into their polarization. I'm just saying, everybody needs to realize that if you're not on board with I don't know what a non-binary person is, they, them, what the hell? Okay, that's fine. That doesn't mean that person's a bigot that hates trans people. They just don't understand it. And in the same breath, trans people aren't all out to get your kids. Maybe there are some out there, creeps, just like in any other demographic, but I don't know. I just feel like they're getting thrown. Gay people are getting thrown under the bus right now, and it's not cool, especially in the truther community. We're supposed to be woke and accepting and understanding, and oh man, it's just disheartening to see sometimes. But I don't want to derail the conversation. I want to stay on topic.
We're going to do a show on this in the near future.
Yes. And again,
I
I've sat in front of my camera. I've sat in front of my camera and just tried to kind of do a rant at least 10 times about this whole issue. And it's just there's too much, and you have to say it exactly right. And because it's also true that there is an agenda right now being pushed, being Trojan horsed in with that. But it's the same thing with the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement. They Trojan horse things in there and they use good movements to do nefarious things all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and it's just, again, I don't want to polarize people. I just think it's important to bring up that there are probably lots of transgender assets, MK Ultra survivors, and we need to have a seat at the table for them. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think that's that crazy of a thing to say.
Do they train them differently?
Well,
that's my question.
We all have male and female alters, and I do think that there are times where either you just remember being a woman so much and you miss it, or they sometimes, I think, even put us into the wrong body, the wrong. You might be more of a masculine entity, and they'll put you in a female body because that's a way where they can control you. That's a way where they can. It's like a cutting you off from source kind of thing. So that's why, I think it's just ridiculous how mean we're being to these people. I just don't.
Or what happened to a mutual friend of ours, where his female alter reintegrated and fully took over, and for several years he was trans. I mean,
so
that happened.
So I see people sharing. It's one thing if you're sharing information about it and you're trying to show stuff that's going on, but when you're just sharing jokes and hurtful, mean things, I mean, I'm at the point where I'm just going to start unfriending people. It's just stupid. And it's a distraction to me. It's like, we should be working together. First person to ever tell me about chemtrails, was a trans person, a decade ago, So it's like these people could be on the same page with us and working with us, and I think that's a lot of what's going on right now, is they're trying to make sure that we're not on the same page, that we don't work together, and that's the biggest agenda being played out right now, is us versus them. We can't get along because we're different. You like Joe Biden, and I like Trump, so we can't get along, and you're gay, and I'm straight, so we can't get along, and you're black, and I'm white, so we can't get along. All that is bullshit. It's programming, and we need to work past it. It's supremely important for us to topple down this cabal that's above us, controlling us, is to stop arguing over the petty issues and start arguing over the issues that actually matter and doing something about them. Actually doing something about them.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground with this interview. I kind of have to get going home fairly soon because we have our guinea pigs at a place. We got to pick them up by 6, and it's a little bit of a drive, so I might have to cut off this interview a little early. But we still have a second. I'm just kind of announcing that we got to wrap things up. Is there anything else that you wanted to say, John?
Not that I can think of. Trying to think of
My question,
And
guys, is: do you think my grandfather was really, committed suicide, or they took him out?
Well,
they're not mutually exclusive.
What?
Omega programming. John, why don't you go into that a little bit?
There's omega programming, which is hey, there's the Greek alphabet, each alpha, beta, theta, whatever, and each letter has a programming associated with it. Omega programming is self-destruct, which it can be triggered. It used to be triggered. They used to have a fail-safe that whenever anyone got their memories back, they would automatically kill themselves. They seem to have stopped
And their
doing
whole
that.
families. Their whole families,
Yeah,
too. Not just themselves. They'd kill themselves and their whole families. 15 years
yeah,
ago, that was par for the course if you got memories back. That's what happened.
Really?
yeah,
Yes. And I witnessed it for my father. My father killed himself. Well, he didn't actually die. He got lucky. If he would have cut any deeper into his neck, he would have been dead. But
I
the whole
remember
the
you
whole
telling me that.
the whole program was kill yourself or we're gonna kill your whole family. And we weren't home. So if we had been home, would he have? I don't know, dude. That's scary. But it wasn't him. My dad's the most loving person that I could ever. He'd give the shirt off his back to pretty much anyone. So he's a very good man. But yeah, he was, and there was VQK involved in that. They were pumping voices into his head. And my aunt, she told me when I got public, when I started talking about this stuff, she's like, yeah, your dad used to talk about it. She used to talk about the aliens and all this stuff, and it made sense. And it kind of freaked me out. And then the next thing I saw him, he's talking about Jesus and stuff. And it's like, yeah, that was the V2K. They started blasting him with religious programming V2K. That's like
Right.
par for the course, too. That's normal. It is normal. And another thing that I could bring up right now that's really good to bring up is like, super soldiers aren't necessarily going to be hulked out, 6'11" people that have an IQ of 180. A lot of the times, it's the fucking schizophrenic home bum you see on the street asking for change. They fucked that
yeah,
person up. They ruined their mind, ruined their life, and that's why they're on the street begging for change. And that would be my father. That would literally be my father if it weren't for the fact that we have such an amazing family on my mother's side that helped take care of him despite the fact they didn't have to. And yeah, that could have easily ended up happening to me. Homeless on the street, freaking out, talking about aliens, and everyone thinks I'm crazy, and I don't have the context, so I can't make any of it make sense. That's normal. That's normal. That used to be what happened to us. But now we got community, we got the internet, we got enough books, we got enough movies, we got enough information out there that we could, where we can understand what's happening to us now. Before. How the hell would I have ever been able to figure out that I was a time soldier that was at Montauk? I mean, I could get these memories back, and they just wouldn't make any sense. But now that we have this community and we have all this information out there, I've been able to put it all into context and have it make sense. And that's a lot of why we have these interviews, is because we're still trying to put it all into context and make sense, and it takes having long conversations like this, where other people can chime in the comments and add their little bits, because sometimes people will add really important information in the comments, and it's just important to just have the conversation, just talk.
yeah, exactly.
Well, Maria, you've done an amazing job with your first interview. I know for the listeners, the viewers, it's kind of all over the place as far as their family connections, and I'm sorry we can't name names, but it is what it is. Thank you, John. As always, you've added a great amount of information to this interview, and it's always a pleasure to have you aboard. I hope eventually you could be the full-time co-host.
Yeah.
Eventually, when you're able to more openly, obviously you kind of have to slink away and kind of hide what you're doing because your family doesn't know what's going on with you, and so that's pretty much the only reason why you're not the co-host. Otherwise, you probably would be already. So I look forward to the future where you are the co-host. It will happen eventually.
Yeah, me too.
So just thanks for listening, everybody. I'm gonna wrap it up this recording, and we'll probably have a little 5-minute private conversation. Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody, and have a great day.